Hey there, my name is Ash Shukla, and I have to say welcome to Financial Chakras Abundance Through Alignment. And today I have a guest here who is money expert. Many times we go through life and we always think about what am I going to do when I'm going through this situation, or whenever you're going through transition, and we ask ourselves, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a move, maybe it's a you lost your job, or you're now looking to get a new job and things like that. So whenever there's a transition going on, that's what's also shifting is your financial frequency. And as that is shifting with you, the question is, what do you do? And that's the questions that we always get to ask ourselves. And I get so many clients who are in that situation. So I thought about bringing an amazing guest today, and her name is Linda Grizely. And I just want to say thank you so much. If you're when you're listening to this podcast, I want to say thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you, and I love you very, very much. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about transition today. How do you take, literally a chaos when life throws you a crisis, and how do you turn it into financial clarity and abundance that you deserve? So here we go, my friend. I'm gonna bring on, Linda. Hey, Linda, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great today, Ash. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Linda, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you very much.
And thank you for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. Okay. All right, Linda, we spoke in the past, and we spoke a little bit about what you're doing, right? But before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from? And let's start there first. Where are you from?
Sure. Yeah, I currently reside in Illinois in the United States, and I am a former financial advisor, financial planner, and recently have left that to focus on financial education and teaching people about personal finance and money rather than actually doing their planning.
I love that. I love that. I will tell you one thing, Linda, because as you know that I was a financial planner too, and these are two financial planners putting their heads together to come to you guys to help you guys out. And I will tell you one thing. I don't know about you, Linda, but once I got done, it was about 5 years ago, right? If I didn't know one more retirement account and their numbers, I was okay with it. I don't know how you felt about that, but that's how I felt about it. I'm like, one more, like, somebody said, I want to talk to you about retirement. I was like, yeah, no. I don't know how you felt. How did you come to the transition phase?
Well, mine wasn't more about talking about the retirement account. Mine was more that I was so interested in the internal blockages that people had in their heads when you were trying to explain to them something that they should or shouldn't do, and they were more worried about what their brother told them or their father told them or their neighbor told them. And, being the financial professional and telling them, your brother or your father or your neighbor and your situation is not the same as them. And so that was the most intriguing part to me, which is why I leaned into the whole mindset and personalities around money, and went to teaching people about financial planning and about financial finances, because I think the more that they can understand it, and the more they can understand the way that their relationship is with money, the way they react to money, like for instance those stories. So helping them to uncover that is part of my process.
Okay, I love that. I love that very, very much. So when you are uncovering this as a process, when you are doing this, okay, and you're helping people out, what are some of the most common things you find people are facing, especially when they're going through transition?
When they're faced with a transition, things are uncertain, so it's very scary, and it a lot of times ends up putting them into a scarcity mindset because they don't know what their financial situation is anymore. Even if they had a pretty good handle on it before, now that something big has happened, whether they've lost a job, they've separated from a partner, whatever has happened, they feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what's next. So, the biggest fear is the fear of the unknown. And with finances, that's huge. So they'll slip into what we call a scarcity mindset, where they're just worried about money all the time because there's so much uncertainty about it.
Mm, yeah, I totally understand that. So when it comes to uncertainty, like, let's talk about individual situations. Okay. So I know sometimes, like people go through, let's just say, a transition from work, from their current job to a new job, or they lost their job because of whatever reason. So what would you say some of the biggest issues are that people are facing when they are transitioning, and how should they be preparing?
Right. Well, right now, you can see on if you're on LinkedIn, you'll see that there's a lot of people that have been looking for a job for a long time. The market's a little bit different right now. And so I think one of the biggest things is that, as you know, Ash, one of the basic foundations of financial planning is having an emergency fund. So if you haven't planned and you don't have an emergency fund, obviously you're going to be in a completely different situation. So building that emergency fund is key in advance so that you can feel a little bit more secure, especially if you're going for a long period of time in between things. With all the layoffs recently, there's just so many people that have been looking and haven't landed anything. It's taking a lot longer than it normally does.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So let's say that sometimes, we people do find themselves in not having cushion, or not having saved enough. What would you say to them, and how should they be preparing in that scenario?
So in that situation, they'll want to look at what their expenses are and figure out what's essential and what's non-essential. So essential things are, you have to have a roof over your head, you have to pay for your utilities, you have to pay for food, but non-essential might be like something that's going out to eat or buying that something that's more expensive food. Maybe you buy like the lower priced brand when you're shopping for things, and make sure that you're not doing things that you don't absolutely have to do. Um, but at the same time, you don't want to neglect yourself. And that's a big part of what I teach in my Me Money method is setting aside a part for you. Because if you eliminate yourself completely, then it's just a downward spiral, because not only are you feeling all this other stuff, but you're not taking care of yourself either if you're not spending any money on yourself.
Yeah, I love that thought process, because you find that a lot of people have not saved a lot of money, right? And then, so do people typically, when they don't have the money or they haven't saved the money, what kind of emotions you find them going through at all times, if you will?
So I would say mostly, like I said, fear, anxiety, worry, all those things that can be associated with money. Because if they haven't prepared properly in advance, then they haven't decided that they're okay. But
Yeah,
sometimes, even if they do have that emergency fund, the idea that they're going to start dipping into it can be just as scary, because they put that aside thinking like, oh, for a rainy day someday, but that'll probably never happen to me. And now it's happening to them and they're having to take it out. And just the idea of seeing that balance go backwards now can be very scary.
yeah. And so when it comes to, like, okay, so now let's say that somebody has thought about this, and somebody has saved up for rainy day, and somebody has done those things, right? So what would be their next step, if they are ready for it?
I would say they still need to do the same things. Like, they still need to make sure that they're cutting back on the excess, right? And making sure that they understand what's a necessary expense and what's not, because there is that uncertainty that they don't know how long they're going to be out of work, or in this transitional phase until whatever happens when they figure out what they get some clarity, right? So
Mm-hmm.
at some point they need to get clarity. So one of the things that someone can do, even if it's just that they've just lost a job and they're in transition looking for another one, is to really get a handle on what those expenses are. I started saying with the essential and non-essential expenses, right? Understanding what's a necessity and what's not, but also figuring out what money they're spending on themselves and starting to place like bigger value on that. Like, if I have an emergency fund, like, is this purchase worthy of my fund money, right? Like, is it that important that I'm going to spend emergency fund money on it? Is it an emergency? Keeping your mortgage or your rent paid, that's an emergency. Keeping your heat or your electricity on, that's an emergency, right? So just putting things in perspective and really thinking of it from that cash flow or budgeting standpoint, but also, like I said, making sure that they're setting aside an amount where they are allowed to spend, like, setting aside a key amount that I call me money, where it's for you so that you still have something that allows you to enjoy your life.
Yeah, and then so when it comes to these things, so when you are looking at somebody's budget, okay, and those of you are listening, I want to let you know that this is a serious conversation we are having, but I also want you to know that you are okay. Like many times we feel like we have when the burden kicks in, when you don't have the money or when you don't have the cash flow coming in, we feel like there's just so much going on and we feel this pressure on yourself, right? So, and this pressure that's bounding, whether it's you're going through divorce, or maybe you go in this case we talked about an example of like transition of a job, but it's the same thing with divorce, or if it's the same thing with other crises. So I want to let you guys know, those of you who are listening, that in the event of crisis, right, your emotions, however you're used to, what do you call this, like reacting, right, your reaction to that goes up 10 times more. So if you learn to just put yourself in a zen state, right, if you just learn to put yourself in a zen, maybe you meditate a little bit, or maybe you do go for a walk, or maybe you like, you're the kind of person who likes to just dance, and that's okay, but whatever puts you into zen state, do that. Okay, so on that front, Linda, what do you normally find that helps the people the most when they're in this situation? For I know what I find it the most, but I want to see what do you find it most.
So a number of things. One is just practicing resilience, in the sense that thinking about other times in their life when they had to go through something and they were resilient and they got through it. What things did they do then that helped them get through it that they can implement now? So looking back and saying, I went through this other hard time and this worked for me then. Make sure you're thinking of like what worked for you before. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, just like you talked about, like the energy of the money, right? The energy of the feeling of scarcity and what you're feeling, and
Yeah.
getting yourself back in that better state, that Zen state. So that can be through meditation. It can be through just relaxation. So re putting your vibration back, like resetting your vibration so that you're not emanating this negative energy.
Yeah.
Because money to me is energy. Like, we live and breathe money, because it's with us just like our breath. Because even when we're sleeping, we're spending money. It's powering our devices, heating our homes, whatever it's doing. It's always there. So when you have that, if you have negativity around it or worry around it, which is negativity, then that just breeds that. So getting that reset, going back to that Zen, like you talked about, Ash, is one of the key things.
Yeah, and so really getting into, so those of you who are listening, right, I want you to know that money is always available and is always abundant. And by the way, you're liking this conversation, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to what to this particular channel, because number one is I highly appreciate you for that, and I get to give you more content just like this one. Okay, so, and I would love your comments, guys. Like, I would love some reviews and comments about what it is that you want to listen to into the future. Okay, so, and this is a conversation about, because what's happening right now is we are going through a transition as a country. We are going through some people are losing, some people are winning, and it's always a constant battle. It's not just one or the other, it's always a battle. And the question is, what do you do when that happens to you? It may not have happened to you right now, but it's also good to think about, if that happens or when that happens, right, how do you prepare yourself so you will transition with ease and flow, with peace and abundance, and that thought process, so that abundance you can attract it more, versus you trying to get desperate, and then you're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and then it just keeps getting away from you, and then you constantly feel more nervous, more anxiety, and the more you feel that, the more money energy goes away from you. It's just like you're trying to attract your significant other, right? When you try to impose, guess what they do? They walk away. Or if you really think about it, even at any with anybody, right? If you just all of a sudden walk up and start talking to them, hey, I know you for so many years, you're so great person, I love you so much, woohoo! Like, when you do that, what happens to you, right? What happens to them? Well, obviously they're gonna be, wait a minute, what just happened? And that would happen. And so you don't want to be in that situation, and you always want to stay in the zen zone. And that's why we are having this conversation. So, Linda, like, when it comes to this money energy, and people are like really looking to stay in the zen zone, okay, and they're looking for some exercises that they can do, what are some of the things you teach that they can do to really bring themselves in a zen zone?
So I teach doing a self-guided meditation. And in one of my courses, I actually have the guided meditation, but you can do it yourself, where you picture yourself where you want to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, wherever that is. So you're picturing that where you want to be and what that feeling is. It's not a number. A number can be part of it, right? But it needs to be really the feeling of it. So picturing yourself with that surrounding, that feeling that you're going to have for that goal that you want or where you want to be, and then really like just focusing on that and then feeling it expand out from you. So expanding out so that you're feeling that energy coming, emanating from your body out further and further into the world. And then as you come out of that self-guided meditation, you bring it back into you. And then that way you've reset your vibration to where you want to be rather than where you are. And I think it's a great exercise, but it also brings to the point that you have to accept your current reality, but not judge yourself for it. Just say, I am where I am, and this is where I'm going. Stay in that vibration, and then just take steps towards that other life or that other thing that you want day by day. However small or big they are. Some days are going to be smaller. Other days you're going to be able to do many steps or do more things. But really, it's just building that momentum from action to get you to where you want to be.
I love that very much. I love that. Thank you so much for that, because that is so crucial that people meditate and manifest every single day, and that's such an important piece of the puzzle. Those of you who are really looking to meditate or manifest, okay, I want to let you know, one, make sure you talk to Linda and get her download for her meditation, okay. But more importantly, if you really want to manifest every single day and you're having a hard time, you can always go to my website, financialchakras.com, and get 14 days free trial of manifestation as well. So it's your choice. But I would say that, if you are looking for just a guided meditation and really good way to do it, I love the process you mentioned, Linda, about what they can do in terms of a process is concerned. And I love the thought process. Okay, you sit down. So the steps are, you sit down, you put on some nice music, right? And then the music that you like, meditation music, preferably that you like. And then you imagine where you want to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, financially speaking, and focus on that, right? And then you let the money come in inside of your body, right? And also resonate it out. So that way you are feeling inside out kind of an energy. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I love that. I love that, right? So is it okay if I add one more step to this for
Of
people?
course.
All right. So those of you are doing this, right? So you want to think about one simple step, okay? So when you're doing this, if you add one step to it where you do it in a way so that it's already happened, and put it into the past tense, like, and you're living in it for 6 months or a year. Just like if you move into a house, or when you move into a house, at first when you are looking to buy a house, you're excited. When you walk into the house, you're even more excited. You can't even believe that you just bought this house. But then as you live into the house and a comfort level you get, and you get to the comfort level in your meditation, in your manifestation that you're doing, you'll get a lot more abundance, last faster. But I love what you said about the meditation, Linda, about how do you really manifest, and how do you get into the total zone of manifestation, which I really, really loved. Okay, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I want to add one more thing to that. When
Sure.
you're doing that, you have to believe it. You have to truly believe it. If you're
Yes.
doubting yourself, then it's not going to work. So
Yes.
you have to set whatever that goal is to something that you truly can believe can happen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was talking to a client once, and she said, her goal was to make $5 million. And I said, well, and she said, but everybody was telling her that that wasn't going to happen. And I said, do you believe it? And she said, yeah, I believe it. I said, well, then you can do it. If you believe you can do it, I believe you can do it. But
Yes.
you have to believe it,
Yes. Yes.
and you have to do the
100%.
work.
Because it's like this, right? So first you adopt the feeling of it, and then you adopt the belief of it, and then the rest of it kind of comes into play. So essentially what you're saying is that first adopt the feeling as you're doing the meditation, and then you make sure the belief is there in terms of belief is concerned, and then it will happen automatically, right? So I know that I have had several clients who have had really good examples. Like one client, Linda, I love what you're saying, because they did exactly that. And they were doing $6 million a year in business, and I started working with them, and their goal was to do 12 million, AUM. We both understand what that is in a year. We did that in 3 months. Okay. And so, like there are other clients, one client went from 600,000 to 22 million in about 2.5 years. So my question to you is, do you have any clients that have gone through something similar, or a process that can, that you can highlight here, or you would like to highlight potentially?
Yeah, I missed part of that. We cut off a little bit, but I think what you were asking me is if I've had clients that have gone through that same process of building. And
Yes.
I mostly work with personal finance, so not business finance.
No
This
business.
particular
Okay.
person I was talking about her business.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's not like to me, it's not like you can just manifest it. Like, you actually have to do the work too. You have to
Right.
be living it and working towards it every day at the same time you're doing the manifesting. You don't
Yeah.
just think about it and then it comes. At least that's what I believe. And then, so you have to keep taking action. And I think
Right.
action and that momentum that you get from each action that you take in working towards that and knowing that that's where you're going is the key.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought process, because some people believe they just sit down and meditate and things are just going to happen to them. That's not how it works, right? So you do have to put in certain things, such as, like, I always call it, magic and logic. Like, so logic has to come into play, where you are taking some action on your side to make things work, and frequencies have to match in order for you to attract what you want. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to the people, right? What are some of the pitfalls you find with people as you're working with them, and they're trying to work themselves out, they're trying to make it out, but what are some of the pitfalls you constantly see with the personal finances?
So I think the biggest pitfall is not understanding their money personality, because everybody has a money personality, and it shapes how they spend and save money. And if you don't understand what yours is and really give, some introspection inside yourself to find out, like, how you're thinking about money, or how you're feeling about money, and how that personality drives you, then you're not going to understand why certain things are working or aren't working for you. For instance, if you are a spender and you are just spending and not paying attention to your money, you might just think, well, I'm doing fine because I'm saving some money and I'm spending some money. But if you're not paying attention to what you're spending on and not putting intention to that, you could be missing out on a lot of other opportunities. And if
Mhm.
you're a saver, which is the opposite, and you are putting everything away and you're not spending money on yourself, let's say, then you might think that spending money on yourself is self-indulgent, but you're not taking care of yourself now. You're only saving for your future self. So in that sense, you're hindering your life now because of something you might have in the future. And there's no wrong money personality. There's several different ones. I identify 5 in my teachings, but there's no wrong money personality. It's just understanding what yours is, so you can understand why you do the things you do with money, or why you don't do the things you don't do with money.
Yeah, I love that. I actually love that. I love the idea of the money personality. And so when it comes to the, let's say, are there certain personalities that are bigger risk takers? And if they want to take another, like a bigger risk, during this time, what would you say to them?
For risk takers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they risk takers are the ones who are like make big bold moves and are like go big or
Hmm.
go home, and they're they just want to do and experience things mostly. And that's just the general, I mean, you can be all levels of this, but that's just the general idea. And the thing is that if you don't put intention around it and have some sort of a container or boundary for it, that's when it gets out of hand. It's okay to have that money personality, and it's just a matter of like saying like how am I going to be more intentional with this personality, whether that's a security seeker or a risk taker or a saver or a spender or an avoider, which is the other one, which are the five that I identify. But any of those, by having putting intention around things and having clarity on it, it allows you to just make better choices with your money.
I see. Okay. So it's all about, then so it boils down to two things: your personality style, and then the choices you're making around the style to make sure that you are safe, you're safely navigating the water.
Yeah.
Now, so let's okay, so give me some context when it comes to the some of the burden that people carry around money.
So our beliefs around money get formed from like our earliest memories. So from family, from culture, from all the experiences that stick with us. So if you think back to your childhood and you think about your first stories of money, which are maybe how your parents interacted with money. Did your parents argue about money? Because if they did, chances are you probably don't want anything to do with money. Did your family talk about money? If they didn't talk about it, you're probably feel like it's taboo and you shouldn't talk about it. So you might be avoiding it. When you first started earning money, how did you first start earning money? Did you have to go out and get a job and earn it yourself? Did you have to, were you on the street begging for money? Did you get an allowance? Were you entrepreneurial? Like how did you make your first money? And those things that are gonna you go through your whole entire life. So for instance, one of my clients talked about how in her life, her mom was always dressed very nicely and bought clothes for herself and did all these things. But for my client as a child, she was brought to buy new clothes when it was time to go back to school. And that was the only time she got to get new clothes. So by
Hmm.
the time she was getting new clothes, everything she had, she was pretty much outgrown. It was worn, it was ragged. But this client of mine was in her 70s already. And I was talking to her about this, and she realized that her whole entire life, she was putting herself last and spending her money on other people and not herself, because she believed then at that point, she discovered that she was just creating that same pattern that her mom had created.
Mm.
So she was just uncovering this, in the last quarter of her life, right?
Wow.
um,
So,
so to think about it that way, like if you don't think about these things and the sooner you can understand what shaped your relationship with money and what your money personality is, the better you'll be able to have clarity on your finances and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
I actually love that. I love this as a conversation as we're talking about this, because it's a very important thing. I think that, I agree with you that a lot of times we go through so many things when we are younger, and we don't remember what's bad for us. I mean, we remember what's good, what's bad for us, or what has hurt us, because neuropathically it hurts us internally. But then we forget what's actually good for us, and that's what you're describing, right? Sometimes you've done some things and you know how to do it, but you just forget. You simply just forget, or you remember things you did it the wrong way and you keep doing it over and over. And that's more came from, than we are known, like, we hear, oh, it's ancestral, all my life, like all my family has been that way. And so it's just hereditary, that it's supposed to be, like this, right? So you hear stuff like that and you go, no, it's not. They just spent more than they made. That was, it's nothing to do with heredity. Just stop spending. Just stop doing stupid things. And like, it's just interesting if you said that, because I was at one point in time, I was looking for an online store. And literally, this company contacted me to build an online store, and it was not a lot of money to start the store. But when I looked at the items, I'm like, there's no way I could like sell that. That's so bad. Like, it's a total waste of money. There was like toys and like whole bunch of gadgets and things that made no sense. I'm like, who in the world buys that? Like, that must be so sad. Like, it made me just think of those families who are like, spending money. Not no, don't get me wrong, it's a good business model and it made a lot of money. But I'm like, consciously, I can't do that. Like that, I'm I'm basically telling them to get ripped off or something. Like, I felt so bad. And I said, no, I'm not going to adopt that model. But what do you find when people are wasting money all the time? And how much normally do you find people wasting?
There's number wise, there's not a normal amount. There's no normal amount because everybody's situation is so vastly different. But I would say, so, okay, let me tell you my story about my husband and I, which is
Yeah,
how actually my whole me money concept came about. It
sure.
started because I put my husband on a budget. So I handle the finances. And so I realized he didn't know what he was spending.
Right.
He was like, "Oh, I'm not spending that much." I'm like, "Yeah, you are." So I said, "I'm putting you on a budget." So I put him on a budget because he's a spender. And he said, "Are you going to put yourself? Are you going to put you on the same budget?" I said, "Yeah, I'll put myself on the same exact budget because we are we're in the same household, we have the same lifestyle. I'll do the same budget." So um, I put us both on this budget. We each had our amount of money that was called our me money, and we put it into a separate account so that we kept it completely separate. And so he's going about spending his money. And I told him, you're gonna have to save up for something that's coming up. Like you're gonna have to know that, you're gonna have to save up for a trip if you want to go on a guy's trip or something. You can't just like borrow it then. So I asked him probably a month in, I said, how's it going? He said, it's going fine. I'm like, what does fine mean? He's like, it's good. And I'm like, are you feeling, because I was worried that he was going to say that he felt restricted and then I was controlling. And that's the last thing I wanted. I just wanted him to understand what he was spending. He said, no, I'm actually making better choices because I know
Mm.
now if I buy this, that I might be saying no to something later. Right. So that opportunity cost, right? If I buy it now, I might not be able to buy that thing later. So he was getting better and like making better choices. And me, on the other hand, I was the saver. So I was always the one who felt guilty spending money on myself. So I might spend money. I'm not saying I didn't spend any money on myself, but I'd be more likely to buy to justify a $10 purchase. So I might buy 10 things for $10 because I'm able to justify $10 10 times, but I might not be able to justify spending $100. But now that I have the container and the boundary for it, I know that if I don't buy those 10 things for $10, that I can buy that $100 thing. And I don't have to justify it to anyone, not even to myself, because I'm the one who was saying I couldn't buy it. Nobody else was telling me that. So you can see how it took the two different money personalities and putting this me money frame around it helped us both in different ways, just because we were much more intentional and were able to place better value on what we were spending our money on.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for that. So I'm so happy to hear that you have two different personalities doing two different things, and you both got something out of that. And that's so crucial. So, I will say that those of you are listening, right? So I understand sometimes you are in fear, and you don't want to look at your numbers, and that's very hard for you. But when you look at numbers, it tells you a story, and that story gives you a proper understanding exactly what you should do and what you should not do. So numbers tell you the truth, and it's hard for many people to find the truth. What happens is when you're looking to find the truth, and part of the reason you might be avoiding the truth is because you might be kind of thinking, okay, you're either a deleting all the good things that happens to you has happened to you because you managed some part of your life or money in some place really well. One. Second thing that may be happening is you are distorting. You're looking at money and you're thinking it's gonna do this, like on one hand or the like on the left hand side, where you feel like, okay, it's gonna do like ABC or ABC or XYZ, when in reality it's actually doing, what's on the right hand side, which is XYZ. Okay, so when you look at the distortion, you're making, let they say, mountain out of a molehill, right? So that's the second big thing that's happening. The third thing that I find with most people is that, so you are literally, what I call a generalizing. Like you have this idea about, my family's always been like this, so I just can't seem to save any money, and it's hereditary. When it comes to, oh, it's a heredity. Well, everybody in my family is doesn't have money, so I don't have money, right? These are all statements you're making to yourself, and they're so, like, so broad, and they're nowhere close to the truth. And when you put numbers down, you come close to the truth. And once you do that, you get to go further, faster, at a much different level. And I'll give you and just so Linda, like, I have a lady in my mastermind group, and she actually went through this, where I helped her do exactly that. And literally, she's on a path, like, she not only paid off like so much debt, okay, but she's also now, and then personal savings wise is concerned, right? And now she's moving her business forward, and she's able to, do so many things with that, right? She literally paid off almost, I think, $20,000 in debt in like less than 3 to 6 months. So it's a very, very short amount of time, and really, really fast. Because why? Because she looked at the numbers, and we looked at the numbers together, and she went forward with that, right? So I'm sure in your case you're finding something similar from a breakthrough point of view, and I'm sure you and your husband found the same kind of breakthrough, correct? Like in terms of that's concerned.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
thinking back to like my financial planning career,
Yeah.
when people would come in and they would say, well, I know I'm behind, looking at retirement, let's say retirement planning. I know I'm behind and I'm embarrassed about what I don't have, and I know I should have saved more by now. And they're just really unsure and really just have this whole like fear about money. And then once you go through that planning process, even if they are behind and you confirm exactly what they thought, they have clarity and they know. And so part of the fear is gone, because part of the fear was the fear of the unknown,
Right.
and part of the fear was the fear that they don't have enough. Now the
100%.
fear of the unknown is gone, and they
Yeah.
still have the fear that they don't have enough, but they know what they need to do. So
Yes.
now they know what they need to do to get to where they want to go, and they can have that serious conversation with themselves about how they're going to get there. But they always feel better once they have clarity.
Yes, they absolutely do, don't they? Like, they
Yeah.
absolutely feel so much better when they have clarity than they're not, right? So I love this conversation that we are having about money, because I can eat this up all day long, 24/7. And but Linda, I do want people to let them know about where they can find you, right? So can you tell them your website or contact that they can reach you, specifically your website, maybe they can go to, and they can have like a download or something of that nature?
Yes, of course. So my website is lindagriz.com, LINDAGRIZ.com. And if you go to the resources page, there is a bunch of freebies that you can download. And one of the main things I want to mention is there is a free money personality quiz. So you can take the money personality quiz as you lean towards on your money personality, and some quick tips on how to lean into that and help you with your finances.
I absolutely love that. Right. So those of you who are wondering like where to find her, right? Just go to lindagrace.com, and so Linda, when they visit your website and they take the money personality quiz, right? What happens after that? Do you sit down with them to talk to them a little bit about their assessment, or how does that work?
Yeah, if they want to schedule a 15-minute conversation with me, they can. There's a booking link on my website too that allows them to book that if they want to. And then I also have a free community that they can join that I just opened up. So they can get into the free community and just poke around. And then my courses are available inside the community.
I love that very, very much. So thank you so much for that, Linda. I really appreciate you for this today. And I love the conversation. We can go on all day long. And those of you who are listening, I want to let you know that, when you are looking to save money, when something happens to you in your life, right? Take a breather. Take a moment and give yourself a chance to calm yourself down so you can get rid of any misunderstandings you may have and get to the bottom line, get to the numbers. Don't be afraid. Just look at them. It will help you make a better choice, right? And the more better choices you make, the better your life will go further and faster. And this has nothing to do with your heritage. It has nothing to do with where you grew up. It has nothing to do with anything else. And I can tell you firsthand. My name is Ash Shukla. Those of you who don't know me, I came here from India to United States with $20 and zero English, and I literally was managing at one point over $300 million. And I have gone through the ringer. When I started in the financial world, I wasn't bad. I was pathetic. I had to blackmail my dad through my mom to get the sale in the door, and eventually, I became really good, and I have been doing really well. And I own this company called Financial Chakras, and this particular podcast I started because I want to make a difference in your life, right? I've helped over 5,000 entrepreneurs, and I've taken several of them over $1 million in revenue. And I'm so proud to say that I've received a congressional honor for the work I've done. And I wrote a book called Sell Like Crazy. Now, look, I came here with nothing, with no English. And the fact that you know English, you are well ahead of the curve. Okay. So that's all I can tell you. If you know English, right, let's make a simple rule. If I know how to say A, B, C, then I can do anything in the world. Okay. So that being said, it is very, very simple. If you make the rule of life very simple, you can achieve any success you want, without fail. The only time you fail is you make the life really, really hard, and you make the rule for success very hard and rule for failure very easy. Let's flip that around and make the rule for failure really hard and rule for success absolutely easy. And one of my rule is that when earth is round and everybody is on the ground, I'm successful. And when earth turns square and everybody is floating in the air is the only time I fail. And that's the way I live my life. And my friend, when you make that commitment to your finances and make it easy, 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 like for yourself, you will have such an amazing time. And I would love to know in the comment what rule you made about your finances that is so easy to follow, right? Easy rules for success, hard rules for failure. I'm talking impossible rules for failure. Okay. So you create that and you let me know in the comment what rule you made that is a brand new rule for you and your family so that you can change the destiny of your your family as is coming and build a legacy of your dreams. And that is my wish for you. Okay. My name is Ash Shukla, and this is Financial Chakras Abundance Through Alignment. I really appreciate you for being here. I love you very, very much. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and so that I can let me know what kind of things you want to learn about so we can bring more amazing guests like Linda Grizely here right now. Be sure to visit financialchakras.com and take advantage of 14 days of free trial for daily wealth manifestation. With that in mind, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you and I love you very, very much. Any last words, Linda, you have real quick?
Oh, just thank you very much for having me, Ash. It's been a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you guys very much.